I'm going to start by saying I don't want to come up here after that speech, so pretty amazing. I'm looking at Katie going, what the hell did you invite me here? So I hope, I'm going to carry my notes because I tend to ramble and I tend to move, so if you don't hear me, just tell me. So I would like to start by thanking all the amazing organizations that came together to put the third annual Journey of Migration event. I sincerely commend your efforts, and I would like to thank the London Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership, the London Cross-Cultural Learning Centre, the South London Neighbourhood Resource Centre, and the Centre for Research on Migration and Ethnic Relations. I personally want to thank, or maybe blame, Katie Borchuk for the invitation. I'm very humbled to be here today, and I truly hope you can gain something from my talk. I certainly don't have such an outstanding background and hardship. My story is a little bit brighter. What I was asked today to share with you and explain how and why I decided to make Canada a place that I'm proud to call my second home. So I'm going to try to, that's my thank yous. This is home for me, so pretty wonderful, if you ask. I moved from Brazil, so I was born and raised in Rio. And I'm really tall, so this thing is not working. Okay, you guys can hear me fine? Okay. So I moved from Brazil when I was 17 years old to go to university. It was kind of a random decision at first. I was 15 and my parents were in a work trip and they visited Vancouver. And it was July and it was sunny and it was just beautiful. And I'm walking around UBC, for those of you who have been there, and I just like fell in love, and there were some good looking boys and it was sunny, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to school here. So that's sort of how my decision came. My English was very poor at the time, and I was sort of determined to learn it because my parents said to me, good luck moving out of the house. If you know anything about South Americans, we stay at our parents until we get married. So I was 17 and I said, I'm going to move. I'm going to come to Canada. So I decided to learn English. And I'm not sure if those of you know or not, but international tuition is about $30,000 a year, give or take, plus living costs and expenses. You add that to my currency, which is about a third of the Canadian dollar. My parents said there's no way you're going unless you get a scholarship. So at the time I was a varsity swimmer, and UBC was very, very amazing to me, and they took me on for my undergrad as swimming for the Thunderbirds, and they paid for my whole tuition, which made it possible for me to come to Canada. So I was really into sports, and I managed to get a scholarship coming to Canada. I didn't really know anyone in Canada, so I picked up and left, and I remember thinking this was pretty great. I'm in the airplane going by myself, no parental control, I'm going to be in another continent by myself, it's going to be great. So obviously after anyone has ever moved, you know that sort of the dust of the excitement settles, and I think for the first time at the bold age of 17, I realized why people call it being homesick. Because it's truly that feeling. It equates to me to a feeling of sickness. I miss the smell of the streets. I miss the most random things one can think of. And I sort of realized that I was in another continent alone. Which really leads me to start sharing with you what I want to share with you today. And that is my story and sort of intrinsic belief that with a sense of purpose, you can truly go from nothing to something. And the reason why I say nothing is it's kind of how I felt when I moved. This is the first place I lived when I went to Canada. So this was kind of the size of, I don't know, a closet a bit, give or take. Not a tent, but to me this was a big adjustment. So in my second year of university, I decided that I was done counting tiles and swimming, and that I was going to finish university and not know what else to tell an interviewer in a career, so I decided to quit swimming. With quitting swimming came about a $35,000 cost. And I called my dad and I said, hey, year 2, I'm gonna quit swimming and I'm going to stay in Canada. You're like, no way, Jose, you're not going to, because I'm not gonna pay for your university. So I was walking around campus kind of aimlessly trying to figure it out, super homesick but determined to make Canada my home. I stumbled upon College Pro. They were recruiting at the university. I'm not sure some of you who know what that is, but it's a painting business, a painting franchise. So I was walking around and I stopped at this guy and I said, hey, like, what are you recruiting for? And he's like, oh, we're recruiting for painting franchises. I was like, okay, how much money do you make with this? And he's like, well, the average person makes about $20,000 to $30,000. I was like, I was like, how much did your best person make ever? And he's like, $50,000. And he looked at me, he's like, but he was a guy, and he was really good. And I was like, okay, well, sign me on. So I called my dad, and I told my dad, who's a physician, that his daughter had quit varsity sports and was going to start a painting business. So needless to say, my dad was not impressed and told me that it's actually a really hard time for me because he told me he wasn't going to talk to me again, and he was really ashamed. If you guys know anything about South American culture, women mostly don't do manual labor if you've had some sort of background in education, and because we have so many people in the country, manual labor is usually done by people who don't have access to education. So it was a bit of a shame on my family for me to take a manual labor job. Long story short, I decided to run the business. I was really, really fortunate, and in my first 2 years of running College Pro, I made about $160,000. So I paid for my whole school, and I ended up running that business for about 4 years. And we employed 15 people full time, and it was my pride and joy. And my dad sort of started getting around to it when I could send him gifts and come home more often. Those are my guys, actually, in the picture, with one of my lovely ladies in Vancouver. So in my last year of university, I was coming out from Whistler from having some fun, and this happened to me. So August 6, 2010, which is exactly about 5.5 years ago, I had, this is my first time sort of publicly sharing this, I had a really bad car accident, as you can sort of attest to. I broke every bone in my body except my right hand, and I had 2 strokes. So that put things slightly into perspective for me. I was sort of in the top of the world, making 6 figures at a bold age of 20. And I had to reevaluate things. And when that happened, my parents tried to find a job in Canada. So my mom couldn't work here because she's a pediatrician, but she couldn't work. And my dad found a job at LHSC, which is how I ended up in London. My family got a job here, so when I was stable enough after 1.5 years of hospital, 176 days of intensive care unit, I moved to London. So I was brought to Parkwood Hospital, which I'm sincerely thankful for to this date, and I was in the stroke ward recovering. So when I look at sort of my success before, I attribute a lot to that to my common denominator with a lot of immigrants. When we move or when we change, we decide to give away our past, give away our history, our status, our last names, or whatever we have to do to make something work. So again, the reason why I tell you this today is because I know each of us here has something in their life that has changed or shaped them. I know that when I realized my options in life had really changed, I really lean on my learnings. I knew I had to change when I faced immigration, and I know this was no different. And that's exactly where I was. I finally got out of the hospital. I really didn't know who I was, where I was, or what the hell I was going to do with my life. They told me I wasn't going to walk or talk again. So I kind of ignored everyone, I tend to do. Some people in the audience know me personally and would attest to it. I decided to go back to university, which Western took me with open arms, and they had an amazing disability program, so I could come in here with my wheelchair, which was just fantastic. And just something to tell you, when you're in a wheelchair and your mother is not working, your only trip out is the grocery store. So, which leads me to my second part of the story. My mom used to take me, my only trip out was in the wheelchair to go grocery shopping. And my mom, as a good Brazilian, loves a deal. So she would take me to 4 grocery stores to find a damn chicken that was cheaper than the chicken on the other grocery store. So there I was, sitting in a wheelchair, hating my life, because you kind of get to see a true taste of humanity from both sides, from a judgment perspective, but also from a kindness, being in a wheelchair. And I just hated being there. So I decided that I was going to come up with a better way. So I went back to school for mathematics and decided to come up with an app that would make my mother shop faster. And therefore, she didn't have to take me to the grocery store. She could do it from a mobile phone. So I came up with an algorithm, which most of you know today as PC+. So the mobile app that Loblaws uses is what I built 3 years ago. And came up with that algorithm, which leads me to the conversation about Canada. I couldn't tell you how proud I am to be able to call this place my home. I was in a wheelchair and I had access to something you spoke about, the number of and these are just a very few out of, otherwise I would fill the whole slide. I was able to raise from these agencies $250,000 in grants. As an immigrant, as a female, as someone who was disabled in a wheelchair, they believed in me and believed in the idea that I had. I saved all that money, and I did something that one of my mentors taught me. I surrounded myself with smarter people than me. So I used every penny I had saved up from my painting days and all the pennies I could save from government, and I decided to hire 8 really smart people. So they helped me build the app. We got an opportunity to be incubated in Toronto in an innovation center called Mars. We were incubated there for a little bit of time where I got to hit the spotlight and take the attention of the Weston family, who in 2013 put an offer on the table to buy the business, and that's how you guys know it today. The same year of that fortune of them wanting to buy my business, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he decided that he was going to do his treatment in London, Ontario. So some family values of mine, my parents moved halfway across the world to take care of me. I was not about not to do the same, so I decided to come back to London and take care of my dad while he's going through cancer. And in that, I quickly realized I couldn't be just a stay-home daughter taking care of someone. I was too ADHD to just sit quietly. So I met the amazing people at RBC who understood diversity and understood that even though I didn't have a banking background, I had a lot to add to the business community, and really gave me a chance. They gave me a role which is quite senior, so I work in senior debt lending with large commercial clients, and I assist them to really understand how to employ more people and grow their business. So long story short, this is why I ramble. If I can leave you with anything about what I've learned and sort of the story that I've been through, and I don't know, is reinvent yourself. When I really look at my life, I have had to change, and change is about the only constant thing in my life. And I'm actually quite comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that anytime that I'm too pushy, I get itchy and want to move. So I was asked to talk to people about what is it like to immigrate, and for those of you in the room who've never imagined or immigrated or moved anywhere, I think I ask you to just take a second and think of the toughest time in your life. Some of maybe the ones that you can share that I've been through. And think about the time that you felt that your comfort was gone. Remember now who helped you, who supported you, who reminded you of your worth and your value. That's what we immigrants need from you. We need you to believe. We need you to believe that for all of those that here, a future is, you can imagine, you can dream of the future. And what more of a compliment can we give you than the fact that we chose to be in your country? The fact that we chose and we're proud and we want to become Canadians. We'll study up all the provinces and write the test and show up there and sing the anthem. How much more proud can we be to give you that value? And for those of you who have just landed or are struggling, I want to ask you to remember your purpose. Remember that maybe they can't pronounce your last name or your first name. They're not going to know who you came from or why you're here. So just remember and take this as an opportunity, like I have, to reinvent yourself. This is truly an opportunity to become more self-aware, push beyond every limit you know is possible. Truly, I believe that your biggest enemy is in your own head, and I will die believing that way. So 3 things that have really helped me through this journey is to reach out. This community has given me more than I could have ever asked in return. Pillar is there because it's an amazing organization that I volunteer with amongst many other ones. Anytime I've reached out to a leader or an important person in the community, whether they're an MP or someone that you see in the magazine, it's amazing how they'll take time and take you for coffee. And they want to help you. Canadians are just that nice. Pay it forward. So I think that's something that I carry through my life, is that I never want to forget where I came from. I never want to forget that one day I was in a wheelchair, one day I was in Brazil figuring out what the hell to do with my life. And if someone asks you just ask them what you can do for them. Honestly, this has been my motto. Anyone that knows me knows I'll ask them, what can I do for you? How can I help you? I believe in karma so much. And believe that what you went through and what you've done in your life is made you who you can become today. I've never believed, if I hadn't believed that I was walking, I wouldn't be in heels talking to you today. Yeah. So thank you. I'm beyond humbled to be here, and I hope that my silly story was an inspiration, or at least a help for you to know that you're not alone.